Dear Buddhist practitioners and friends, life is never without challenges, but true happiness is not a destination, it is a state of mind. We cannot find happiness in external things, material wealth or fame, but only by finding peace and harmony within ourselves. Happiness comes when we learn to let go, live simply, and allow our souls to be free. At Channel Living Peacefully, we wish to walk with you on the path to finding peace and happiness. This is not only a place to share profound teachings of Buddhism, but also a space for you to discover meaningful, peaceful living in each moment of life. Subscribe to Channel Living Peacefully today and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our insightful teachings, helping you live more peacefully and happily every day. Together, we will build a community of love and spiritual growth. Amitabha Buddha. In this life, we cannot avoid the turbulence, the challenges, or the suffering that life brings. Whether we want it or not, these difficulties are ever present, like great waves crashing relentlessly against the shore. So, the question arises, how can we overcome all these challenges and still maintain peace within our hearts? The answer from the Buddha's teachings is, live in harmony with nature. Living in harmony with nature is not about being powerless or passive in the face of difficulties. On the contrary, it is a deep understanding of the laws that govern the universe and a harmonious alignment between ourselves and what is happening around us. When we live in harmony with nature, we no longer force things, no longer try to control everything according to our desires. Instead, we adopt an open-hearted attitude of acceptance, understanding, and letting go of all attachments. This living in harmony with nature comes from the humility of wisdom. When we realize that we cannot control everything in life, that life has its own laws that cannot be changed, we will understand that suffering arises from trying to change what cannot be changed. Just as a river, once it has started flowing, cannot turn back, or as spring inevitably follows winter, no matter how much we desire it, so too in life, challenges and circumstances will come and go according to the natural law, not by our wants or dislikes. Living in harmony with nature does not mean being passive or giving up everything. It means understanding that we can change ourselves to adapt to our circumstances. When we stop forcing, when we no longer try to make everything fit our desires, we will find that life becomes easier. It is in letting go of unrealistic desires that we experience freedom and peace. We no longer worry about things we cannot control, but instead focus on what we can change, ourselves, our perspective on situations, and our attitude towards life. Remember, each of us has a unique path and a different karmic journey. Some are wealthy, others poor, some are healthy, others are ill. Everyone has their own circumstances, and no one can face the same challenges. But in these differences, we learn the most important lesson: happiness does not come from changing circumstances but from transforming our own hearts. When we live in harmony with nature, we also learn to live mindfully in each moment. Mindfulness is the ability to fully recognize what is happening in our lives without judgment, without worry, and without expectation. A mindful person does not obsess over the past or worry about the future. They know that everything is interdependent, every circumstance has a reason, and therefore, there is no need to worry about what has not yet come. An important aspect of living in harmony with nature is practicing silence and patience during difficult times. When facing challenges, instead of reacting immediately, we need to learn to remain silent, allowing things to unfold naturally. Silence is not surrender, but an acceptance and understanding that sometimes there is no need for words or immediate actions. Words and actions taken in haste, driven by anger or anxiety, often only worsen the situation. If we can maintain calmness and patiently wait, letting time bring change, we will find that life's problems can resolve on their own without adding negative emotions. In reality, failure and mistakes are invaluable lessons that life offers us. Every time we fall, we have the opportunity to learn, grow, and perfect ourselves. And this is one of the profound meanings of living in harmony with nature. There is no permanent failure, just as there is no eternal success. Everything comes and goes, and it is through accepting this change that we no longer cling to the past, fear the future, and live fully in the present. Living in harmony with nature also teaches us that a simple life is a happy life. We do not need to compete with society, accumulate wealth, or strive to become someone others expect us to be. A life is already happy when it is enough, when it is filled with peace, love, and sharing. Simplicity comes when we know how to be content, when we understand that what we have today is the result of past karmic causes, and we are grateful for it. Thus, living in harmony with nature is the journey of peace, of gratitude, and acceptance. We cannot change everything, but we can change our perception and attitude toward life. When we stop expecting too much and stop imposing high expectations, we will find that life becomes lighter, calmer, and happier. The world may be turbulent, but if we have inner peace, we will still find happiness in any circumstance. Therefore, dear friends, remember, do not force. Live in harmony with nature. Let life unfold as it must. Then, when you look back, you will realize that happiness is not something distant, but the peace in every breath, in every moment of our lives. May all beings find peace and happiness in their lives. In this life, no one can avoid the times when they must face challenges, difficulties, and suffering. We often feel caught in a whirlwind of anxiety and restlessness whenever we encounter stressful situations or when life tests us. Yet, in these moments, is there a way to maintain peace in our hearts, to avoid being swept away by our emotions, and to regain clarity amidst the storm? Buddhism teaches us that, in difficult situations, it is calmness and silence that serve as the key to overcoming adversity. Calmness is not a passive state or the absence of emotion, but a deep understanding of oneself and the world around us. It is the ability to observe things objectively and with clarity, without being overwhelmed by negative emotions. Silence, in this case, is not about avoiding or escaping reality, but a form of patience, a form of respect for ourselves and for what is unfolding in front of us. In moments of facing challenges, when emotions rise and the mind is tangled in negative thoughts, silence is the time we allow ourselves to pause. It is when we create space for our soul to find stillness, so that our thoughts are no longer influenced by the storm of emotions. Silence is the space for us to listen, not just to what others are saying, but more importantly, to listen to ourselves. It is the moment when we stop all actions and allow ourselves to control our emotions, to reflect clearly, without being swept up in hasty, automatic reactions. Calmness in the face of challenges is a quality that must be cultivated. When the mind is disturbed, and emotions become intense, it is calmness that helps us avoid being swept away by the current of the situation. Instead, we maintain inner balance. In Buddhism, calmness is likened to a small boat in the middle of the ocean. No matter how strong the waves may be, the boat remains steady and unflipped, for it has been designed to withstand the great storms. Similarly, if we can cultivate calmness, no matter how turbulent life becomes, we can stand firm, not being pushed around or losing our direction. However, this is not easy, because human nature tends to react emotionally when faced with adversity. When confronted with injustice, failure, or suffering, it is easy for us to succumb to feelings of anger, dissatisfaction, or even despair. But these emotions are often the very reason we make mistakes, acting impulsively and sometimes causing harm to ourselves and others. Silence is not about escaping, but about halting these immediate reactions, allowing us to view situations more clearly. This calmness and silence not only have a positive effect on personal situations but also have a profound impact on those around us. When we maintain calmness in an argument, when we do not allow ourselves to be caught up in negative emotions, we help those around us maintain peace as well. Silence becomes a form of sharing tranquility, as we prevent tension from spreading and do not allow uncontrolled emotions to affect others. In Buddhism, this silence is considered a method for extinguishing conflicts, because sometimes, disputes do not require words, but rather the stillness of the heart to resolve. When we can maintain calmness during challenges, we will easily realize that nothing in life is permanent. All difficulties are temporary, and all suffering can eventually pass. Calmness helps us accept that life will always have its ups and downs, and we cannot change everything. However, we can change our perception and attitude towards challenges. When we stop reacting negatively, when we no longer feel pain or helplessness, a mindful perspective on our present situation will help us find a way to resolve the issue or, at the very least, accept that we are in a situation that cannot be changed immediately. Silence in challenges is also a form of forgiveness and letting go. Sometimes, it is the wounds, the injustices in life that prevent us from forgetting, from forgiving. But it is silence and calmness that help us practice forgiveness, helping us free ourselves from the grip of the past. Forgiveness is liberation for oneself, not an act of leniency or ignoring others, but the release of the soul, so we no longer have to endure the pain from past wounds. When we learn to be calm and silent in the face of challenges, we also learn to respect life and those around us. Silence is not just self-control, but also a way of respecting others. It is the act of not letting anger or disappointment harm our loved ones. This is how we express love and understanding when we refrain from reacting strongly and do not cause others to suffer from our negative emotions. Finally, we must recognize that calmness and silence in the face of challenges are a means to attain wisdom. When the mind is at peace and emotions no longer control us, we will see things more clearly, recognizing the deeper causes and valuable lessons that life offers. From there, we will no longer fear challenges, nor feel discouraged in the face of difficulties, for we will have the wisdom to view all problems correctly and clearly. May all beings be able to remain calm in the face of challenges, to find peace in all circumstances, and thereby achieve liberation from all suffering in life. In this modern life, which is filled with complexities, where every day we face numerous choices, relationships, and societal pressures, we often forget one core value: the simplicity of life. It is this simplicity that not only helps us live more lightly but also serves as the path to true peace and happiness. Particularly, letting go of selfishness is a crucial element in this journey. Humans are often caught up in an endless race, striving for more wealth, fame, material possessions, or to prove ourselves. While these pursuits might bring temporary satisfaction, they cannot provide profound, lasting happiness. In contrast, when we choose to live simply, we are no longer driven by endless ambition. Instead, we focus on inner values such as love, understanding, and harmony with nature. Living simply does not mean giving up everything, but rather learning to respect and appreciate what we have in the present moment, without allowing greed to cloud our peace of mind. When we live simply, we learn to face life directly, without clinging to external things and forgetting our true selves. Simplicity is not about renouncing material wealth entirely, but about not allowing material things to dominate our hearts. External possessions, whether they are wealth, fame, or excess, cannot bring us true happiness. Happiness comes from understanding ourselves, from contentment with what we have, and from a peaceful heart that is no longer distracted by unnecessary desires. It is this simplicity that offers a way to break free from the whirlpool of craving and the invisible burdens we create for ourselves. However, in order to live simply, it is not just an external change that is needed, but an internal transformation. The psychology of greed and selfishness is often the greatest barrier to a simple life. Selfishness is when we think only of ourselves, when we see the world through the lens of I, without understanding the feelings of others. When our minds are constantly craving possession, ownership, and control, we will remain stuck in a cycle of scarcity and fear. Our ego grows larger, and as a result, greed and selfishness deepen. But selfishness is not only expressed through narrow actions. It also manifests in an unwillingness to share, in closing ourselves off from others, and in failing to open our hearts to the goodness in life and the people around us. We often think that by keeping everything for ourselves, we will be safer, happier. Yet in reality, selfishness is the very cause of suffering. The ego always makes us feel lacking, because the heart never feels enough. If we cannot let go of our ego, we will always live in a state of deprivation and will never find true peace. Letting go of selfishness is letting go of the endless desires for self, for personal gain, and for control. When we release selfishness, we learn to live for others, for the community, and for the beautiful things in life. It is love, compassion, and kindness that become the source of happiness. When we no longer live for ourselves, but instead, live for others, we realize that happiness is not something to be competed for, but something that comes naturally when we give without expecting anything in return. True satisfaction comes from giving, not from holding on. When we let go of selfishness, we will realize that in this life, giving is incredibly important. Giving love, sharing, and expressing gratitude are the things that life truly needs. The simplicity of the heart, the purity of the soul, is the most precious gift we can offer ourselves and others. Furthermore, when we release selfishness, we also learn to accept the impermanence of life, no longer clinging to things that we cannot control. Every passing moment is priceless, and we cannot keep everything. It is this understanding of impermanence that helps us live more simply, appreciating each moment without wasting it on unnecessary things. Letting go is liberation from all attachments. It is releasing ourselves so that the soul can soar freely, unburdened by the worries of the world. Life, in essence, is simple. It is just that we have complicated it with desires and unnecessary concerns. When we understand that happiness is not about possession but about sharing, about knowing sufficiency, and respecting what we have, we will find peace in our hearts. Simplicity and letting go of selfishness are the paths to freedom: freedom from ambition, freedom from anxiety, and freedom from unnecessary constraints. In conclusion, living simply and letting go of selfishness is not about renunciation but about a profound awareness of the true value of life. It is the spiritual values that are truly precious, and what we have in our hearts, not what is external, that leads us to eternal happiness. May all beings be able to live simply, let go of selfishness, and, through this, find true happiness in each moment of life. In this life, we cannot help but notice that every action, word, and thought we have affects both ourselves and others. This is due to a natural law that governs all things, the law of cause and effect. But more importantly, as we walk the path of practice, we must remember that compassion is the invisible thread that connects all beings in the universe. When we deeply understand the theory of cause and effect, we realize that it is not simply about action, result, but that compassion itself, this profound force, has the power to transform our fate. The law of cause and effect is a core teaching in Buddhism, which explains that each of our actions creates a cause, and from this, a result will follow. If we plant good seeds, we will reap sweet fruits. Conversely, if we plant bad seeds, we will face unpleasant outcomes. However, cause and effect are not limited to actions alone, they also extend to our thoughts and words. Everything is interrelated. And in all the actions we perform, if they are sincere and imbued with compassion, even before the result appears, we can still experience the inner peace that such actions bring. However, we must remember that cause and effect are not a punishment or reward imposed by an external force, but rather the natural result of what we have created. Cause and effect do not follow a fixed timeline, and therefore, the outcomes we experience may not always be immediate. Sometimes, the negative results of our actions may only appear after a long period of time, but other times, positive outcomes may arise quickly and immediately bring us sweet results. Cause and effect are limitless, and so we must always maintain a compassionate heart to act in accordance with righteousness. Compassion is the profound understanding of the suffering of others, and from this understanding arises the willingness to help, share, and love without expecting anything in return. Compassion is the expansion of the heart, unconditional love that knows no distinctions whether rich or poor, good or bad, or of any race. When a person lives with compassion, they not only treat others well but also treat themselves with kindness. Compassion is not only a noble virtue but also a practice that can change our destiny, because when we sow the seed of compassion, the sweet fruits of it will nourish us throughout our lives. Compassion is not about yielding or being weak in the face of wrongdoing, but rather about the courage to do what is right, even when it may involve facing harm. We can love without allowing ourselves to be exploited. True compassion is understanding that all beings suffer, and we must take responsibility for alleviating the suffering of others. Practicing compassion is not just about seeing others with empathic eyes, but about acting to alleviate their suffering. These may be small gestures, such as a smile, an encouraging word, a caring touch, or forgiveness. Every compassionate act, no matter how small, contributes to creating a chain of kindness in this life. When we act with compassion, we not only change the lives of others, but we also transform ourselves through each action. However, it is crucial to note that the practice of compassion must always be linked with the realization of the law of cause and effect. We do not act with compassion in the hope of receiving rewards, but because we understand that compassionate action is part of a good karma, a way for us to develop and harmonize with the universe. The mind of compassion never comes with expectations or demands but is always selfless, meaning there is no distinction between the giver and the receiver. In our practice, we must always be mindful of our thoughts and words because cause and effect begin with thoughts. A negative thought, even if not acted upon, can still create a bad cause in the future. On the other hand, a compassionate thought or a kind word, even without any specific actions, can create sweet fruits in life. We must maintain a pure heart, living in accordance with moral values and compassion, not just through actions but also in our thoughts and words. By understanding and practicing cause and effect, we can improve our current life and free ourselves from the bonds of karmic consequences. Furthermore, when we practice compassion, we are also sowing good seeds for the future, ensuring we receive blessings not just for ourselves but for others around us. It is important to understand that compassion is the source of all good fortune, and the law of cause and effect is the path that leads us to a life of happiness and peace. In conclusion, compassion and the law of cause and effect are not abstract concepts, they are living principles that each of us can practice in every moment of our lives. We must live responsibly with our actions, words, and thoughts, as they will determine our future. Let us always hold compassion in our hearts and understand the law of cause and effect, so that we may maintain peace of mind and spread love to those around us. May all beings be blessed with compassion, enlightenment, and happiness, so that each of us may overcome suffering and live harmoniously in the light of cause and effect and compassion. Suffering is an inseparable part of human life. Each of us must face it in various forms, from physical pain, emotional sorrow, to the wounds in our relationships with others. Suffering is something that no one can avoid, and no one can live without experiencing it at least once. However, in Buddhist teachings, suffering is not an end, but rather the beginning of a journey of healing and liberation. The Buddha taught that suffering is an inherent nature of life. In the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha clearly pointed out that suffering is one of the great truths that he revealed. Suffering is not only the physical pain or material loss, but also mental anguish, the unconscious struggle between desire and reality. When we fail to recognize the impermanence of all phenomena, when we try to hold on to what cannot be held, that is when suffering arises. Suffering comes from not understanding the true nature of the world and of ourselves. We suffer because we cling to the impermanent, because we seek happiness outside of ourselves, failing to realize that true happiness lies within. But Buddhist teachings not only point out the existence of suffering, but also show us the path to healing. This path of healing is not a simple remedy but a long journey requiring patience, awareness, and action from each of us. Healing through Buddhism is a spiritual practice to free ourselves from the bonds of suffering and to recognize the true nature of life. The Buddha taught that healing is not just about alleviating temporary pain, but awakening the mind, changing the consciousness so that it is no longer controlled by suffering. Buddhism helps us look at suffering deeply. Instead of rejecting or running away from it, Buddhism advises us to face and accept suffering, for suffering is an integral part of spiritual growth. The Buddha said, "Suffering is not here to disturb your life, it is an opportunity for you to look within yourself and see the imperfections in your ego." When we begin to embrace suffering, instead of resisting it, we will realize that these very sufferings are wonderful teachers, opportunities to practice patience, letting go, and compassion. Buddhism teaches us that when our minds are stuck in suffering, it is because we have not yet found enough tranquility and understanding. In the process of practice, meditation is an effective tool to free the mind from the storms of emotion. Meditation helps us return to the present moment, facing the pain without being overwhelmed. When we learn to observe suffering without being dominated by it, we can feel peace even in the midst of life's storms. Another method of healing is forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about forgetting the wounds, but rather about freeing the heart from resentment and anger. When we forgive ourselves and others, we are not trying to change the other person, but changing the way we perceive suffering. Forgiveness is letting go of all attachments, leaving peace in the heart. It is also a way to realize that suffering is a relative concept, and when we no longer cling to it, it no longer has the power to control our lives. Healing through Buddhism is not just a spiritual remedy, but a path leading to complete liberation from all suffering. It is the path of cultivating wisdom and practicing compassion, of embodying truth in every action, word, and thought. When we understand karma and the law of cause and effect, we realize that every suffering is the result of past actions. Therefore, Buddhism teaches us not only to heal in the present but also to correct past mistakes to create good outcomes in the future. Throughout the healing journey, patience and trust in the Buddha's teachings are essential. This healing is not an instant miracle but a long process. We need perseverance, diligence, and most importantly, faith in the transformative power of Buddhist teachings. Step by step, we will see our hearts gradually lighten and find peace, even if the external circumstances may not change immediately. From suffering, we can learn deep insights into life. Every pain holds a valuable lesson, an opportunity for us to develop wisdom and cultivate virtue. Suffering teaches us to appreciate happiness, for when we go through difficult moments, we understand the value of peace and happiness in every moment. Therefore, Buddhism not only helps us heal externally but also transforms our perspective on the world, helping us to transform our hearts, and thus live a meaningful and happy life. I sincerely wish that all practitioners may embrace suffering as part of life, and from there, heal themselves through the path of Buddhist practice, to liberate themselves from all suffering and live peacefully and happily in every step of their journey. Amitabha Buddha. In life, family relationships are among the most important connections we have. Family is where we are born and raised, where love and care form the foundation for the development of our soul. However, not all family relationships are peaceful and harmonious. Sometimes, it is the people closest to us who become the source of conflicts, misunderstandings, and suffering. Family disputes may arise from disagreements, lack of understanding, or unrealistic expectations that each person has for one another. In such moments, we may feel hurt and trapped, and sometimes, this leads to resentment, anger, and even the desire to sever the relationship. Yet it is precisely in these difficult situations that forgiveness becomes the key to unlocking the path to liberation for the soul. Buddhism teaches that forgiveness is one of the noblest actions a person can take. Forgiveness is not only the tolerance of others' mistakes, but also the liberation of ourselves from negative emotions such as anger, resentment, and prolonged suffering. Forgiveness is an act of compassion, a letting go of things that weigh heavily on our hearts. When we cannot forgive, we become entangled in negative emotions, and these emotions become our masters, obstructing our development and peace of mind. The Buddha taught that when we forgive, it is not because the other person deserves forgiveness, but because we need to free ourselves from the suffering caused by resentment. Forgiveness is not an easy task, especially in family relationships, where feelings and the connections between members are deeply complex. When someone in the family hurts us, our hearts often ache because this is someone we love, someone we have placed great trust and expectations in. However, when we approach the situation with compassion and understanding, we will realize that each person has their own pain and limitations. Therefore, the wrong actions of others may not be intentional, but rather stem from ignorance or being trapped in their own negative emotions. Forgiveness within the family is a way for us to understand and accept others, not because they are perfect, but because we are all flawed human beings in need of love and empathy. In a family, if everyone holds grudges and resentment in their hearts, conflicts will never be resolved, and harmony will always remain distant. On the other hand, when we practice forgiveness, we not only free ourselves from the burdens of resentment, but also help our family become more harmonious, living in love and understanding. Forgiveness in the family is a way to demonstrate true love, an unconditional offering not of material things, but of the sharing of the soul. We forgive because we recognize that everything can change, and that everyone can correct and learn from their mistakes. Forgiveness is also the path to reconciliation. In Buddhism, reconciliation does not merely mean saying sorry without change, it is a true transformation from within, from our thoughts and feelings. It is a shift in how we perceive others, ourselves, and the world around us. When we forgive, we are opening our hearts to accept change, not just the change in others, but also the change within ourselves. Only when we truly let go of all hatred and resentment can we see things more objectively and clearly, and from there, resolve family issues in a more complete and harmonious way. One important teaching in Buddhism is that when we forgive, we do so not because the other person deserves to be forgiven, but because we ourselves need to be freed from suffering. Forgiveness is the practice of compassion and wisdom in our daily lives. The Buddha taught, forgiveness is the greatest freedom, because when we forgive, we no longer have to live in the shadows of resentment. Forgiveness allows us to see the impermanence of all things. Nothing is permanent, and all suffering can be alleviated if we open our hearts and practice tolerance. When we learn to forgive, we will understand that no hostility is beyond resolution, and no relationship is beyond healing. Forgiveness creates space for love to grow and brings prosperity to relationships. Only when we forgive others can we free ourselves from the burdens in our hearts and live with a light and peaceful mind. Forgiveness not only brings peace to our hearts but also freedom within ourselves, allowing us to truly live with our own selves, our family, and everyone around us. I sincerely wish that all Buddhist practitioners will always remember that in every relationship, especially within the family, forgiveness is a conscious choice of awakening. Let us forgive to liberate our hearts, to build a harmonious and joyful family, and from there, practice the noble teachings of the Buddha, living a beautiful life full of love and happiness. After reflecting on the core values of life, we can see that true happiness is not something distant or beyond our reach. Real happiness does not come from external possessions, wealth, fame, or the fleeting satisfaction of momentary pleasures. True happiness arises from within our own hearts, from a deep understanding of ourselves, life, and the relationships around us. In concluding today's talk, we are not just reviewing what has been discussed, but rather reminding ourselves of the path to authentic happiness, a path that each of us can find. This path is not one of searching outwardly, but one of returning to ourselves, finding tranquility in our hearts and clarity in our minds. First and foremost, remember that everything in this life is impermanent. We cannot resist the changes, challenges, and difficulties that life presents. But it is precisely in these moments that we must learn to live in harmony with nature. We must learn not to interfere too much with what cannot be controlled, and to allow things to unfold naturally. This is how we express inner stillness, a peace within that is not shaken by external circumstances. When we learn to live in harmony with nature, we will feel a sense of lightness, calmness, and happiness that comes from this understanding. Next, when faced with challenges, calmness and silence play a crucial role. Do not rush to react to difficulties, do not let emotions dominate your actions. Instead of anger, worry, or fear, let us learn to maintain a still mind, recognizing that in every challenge lies an opportunity for growth, a chance to find clarity and the right solution. Silence is not the silence of weakness, but the silence of a firm heart, ready to face and overcome all challenges. It is in silence that we find awareness, a deep understanding of what is truly happening. One of the most important keys to achieving happiness is living simply and letting go of selfishness. In the modern world, we often become caught up in endless desires, unrealistic expectations, and constant comparisons. This exhausts our minds, creates stress, and leaves us feeling incomplete. However, when we learn to let go of unnecessary desires, when we live simply, appreciate what we have, and understand the meaning of contentment, happiness will naturally follow. Happiness is not something far away, it is found in the joyful moments of everyday life, in the things that exist in this very moment. Lastly, to achieve true peace, we must practice compassion and understand the law of cause and effect. Every action, every word, every thought we have affects both ourselves and the world around us. When we sow good seeds, we will reap good fruits. When we live in compassion not only towards others but also towards ourselves, we will find inner peace and the strength to overcome all obstacles. Compassion is not only the kind treatment of others, but also the understanding and love we give ourselves, being forgiving of our own mistakes and shortcomings. We may not be able to change what has happened in the past, but we can decide how we live in the present. Do not let resentment and regret control our lives. Let go of the burdens in our hearts, live with an open mind, and only then will we experience the peace, happiness, and freedom that we seek. Finally, I would like to reiterate, happiness is not a destination we must rush to reach. Happiness is a state of mind, a harmony between body and mind, a full living in each moment. When we live mindfully, with compassion, knowing enough and letting go, happiness will naturally come to us. Let us live like flowers that always turn toward the light, spreading the fragrance of love and peace. In doing so, every day of our lives will be a day of true happiness, not found anywhere far away, but in each breath, in every peaceful moment of our present life. Amitabha Buddha.